district has embraced CIR as a key component of improving teaching and learning. From all of our hard work, we know that this coaching and reflection process helps make our teaching more sticky, which then leads to deeper student learning. But how does this fit in with T-Tess? How does CIR support you as a teacher? In this quick video, we are going to explore the overlap of these two coaching processes and see how CIR supports the T-Tess evaluation model. To start, let's review both the T-Tess and CIR processes separately. As you hopefully know by now, the Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System, also known as T-Tess, emphasizes student-centered instruction and supports teacher growth. If we look at the primary components of T-Tess, they consist of observation, goal setting and professional development, and the evaluation of student growth. Teachers work through these three components with their administrator, following a coaching model that includes a series of pre-conferences, walkthroughs, post-conferences, and formal observations. Of these three components, 70% of the T-Test process focuses on observation. This is then divided up into four key domains: planning, instruction, learning environment, and professional practices and responsibilities. Within each domain, there are then a series of specific dimensions that can be measured. Each dimension has its own rubric, and observations are scored at different levels, including distinguished, accomplished, proficient, developing, or improvement needed. Generally, the more student-centered the instruction and classroom, the higher up the rubric the score will be. Now, collaborative instructional review, or CIR process, creates an avenue for instructional planning, reflection, and coaching. CIR uses the rigor relevance framework to really focus on student learning and outcomes, and to provide an extra set of eyes for the teacher so that they truly understand the level of learning that is going on in the classroom. The CIR process looks like this and consists of four different pieces. First, the pre-visit, where the teacher meets with a coach and some colleagues to review the lesson and the strategies that will be used, followed by the actual visit and observation, where the colleagues and or coach come to observe the lesson being delivered. This is followed by a reflection and debrief, where the teacher meets with those who came to observe to discuss the learning that was going on in the classroom. And finally, in action, the apply, where the teacher takes the new learning from the aforementioned process and applies that to their future plans and lessons. This process is repeated for rigor, relevance, and learner engagement. By focusing on each element separately, it allows for a very specific and targeted planning, observation, and feedback experience for the teacher. CIR improves student achievement because of the focus on learning. It improves instructional effectiveness as the teacher works towards identifying the right tool, the right strategy, the right lesson for their students to learn at the exact right levels. CIR also improves your teaching because we learn and end up discussing a variety of tools and strategies that is then shared not only with the teacher who is being observed, but also those who are doing the observing. And finally, it deepens professional dialogue and builds a community of instruction. So, as you can see, both the CIR and T-Test processes are aimed at supporting teacher growth in the context of shifting to student-centered, rigorous, relevant, and engaging classrooms for all learners. Any action within CIR can serve as evidence for T-Test. Further, working through the CIR process will also help you become more comfortable with and engaged in both reflective practice and coaching relationships, both of which are key elements to growing within the T-Test rubric. So next, let's take a closer look at the rubric so we can identify some specific examples of CIR and T-Tess alignment. For our examples, we're going to zero in on just one specific rubric from CIR, the rigor rubric, and more specifically, we're going to look at one indicator, thoughtful work, and focus in on a level 4 of well-developed. So if we look at the descriptor under instructional design, it aligns directly with the T-Tess 1.1, which is planning, standards, and alignment. The text under instructional design, it says learning tasks extend student learning, inspiring them to pursue self-discovery. And if I look at the text under distinguished in 1.1, it says objectives that are aligned and logically sequenced to the lesson's goal, providing relevant and enriching extensions of the lesson. So both of these descriptors focus on extending student learning. If I look at the first descriptor under student learning, we can also see a connection to T-Tess 1.4, which is planning activities. Students develop their own learning tasks that stretch their creativity, originality, design, or adaptation. The T-Tess rubric states opportunities for students to generate questions that lead to further inquiry and promote complex, higher order thinking, problem solving, and real world application. So both of these are focusing on students creating their own learning through creativity, higher level thinking, and questioning. If we look at the second indicator underneath well-developed in student learning, we see that this also talks about 1.4, where it identifies student self-assessment, evaluation, and goal setting as important. And then we can move on and look at on further review of the So if we look at the second indicator under student learning, it talks about students assessing their own learning and moving forward to adapt their knowledge, which also ties into 1.4, where the students have the ability to set goals, reflect on, evaluate, and hold each other accountable. If we look more closely at the first student learning descriptor, we see that it also addresses T-Tess 2.3, which is instruction communication. This focuses in on the teacher's ability to design instruction that leads to student-directed learning. And this is really just a tiny close-up of how the CIR and T-Tess processes align. If we were to look closely at each element of the CIR rubric, we could identify a direct alignment with the T-Tess rubric throughout. So, what do we do now? What can you do with this information? Well, the first thing is, if you haven't already been CIR trained, seek out an opportunity. The training will really deepen your understanding of rigor, relevance, and learner engagement, which will naturally help you move up the rubric in the T-Tess evaluation system. Secondly, use the CIR rubrics when you are planning so that you can get that just right level of instruction for your students. Finally, talk to your administrator about how CIR supports your T-Tess evaluation. Engaging in a dialogue with your administrator will help both of you to identify this as something that you are focused on. For a more detailed look at CIR and T-Tess alignment, review BISD's Collaborative Instructional Review and the Teacher Evaluation and the Teacher Evaluation and Support System Alignment document. Thank you.